So this morning I wake up, turn on the computer, and the first thing I see is Sony FX3. What a crazy camera, guys. Every single site was talking about this particular camera, and some of the initial rumors were that this brand new camera, the FX3, kind of the little brother of the FX6 and FX9, is going to be an 8K camera. However, hold the horses because everything changed in matters of hours, and today we're gonna be talking about the camera, but also we're gonna be showing you pictures, so coming right up. Welcome back to the channel, guys, and yes, the Sony FX3 is something that we're gonna hear announcements very soon, but before we continue, let's talk about this bad boy that I have in my hand because I'm giving away a brand new Zhiyun Crane 2S, and all you have to do to enter is read the rules right here. I'm gonna list them down in the description, and this little bad boy can actually be yours. I'm gonna be making the announcement on April 5th. Good luck to all of you guys, and let's go back to the FX3. All right, so we are going to be talking about the pictures that you are seeing right now on the screen. And as you guys can see, the Sony FX3 is actually a crazy camera. Look at the size of this thing. The first thing that you're gonna notice is that this camera, has a body very reminiscent of a Sony A7C or an A6600, line. And the camera looks, it looks small, it looks a little bit thicker than an A7C, obviously thicker than an A6600, but I really like what we're seeing here. So why don't we start dissecting the front of the camera, because we can see at a glance that this camera is gonna offer a lot of new things. Now, the first thing that we can see is that this one is going to be a cinema camera first. Now, I said first because the camera may actually do some photos, it may have some still capabilities, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because look at the front of the camera, look at the grip. The first thing that we can see, something that we don't have on the A6000 line or the A7C, we have a front dial right here where you would actually use it to control the aperture. But also where the shutter release of the Sony A7C, for example, would be, there is a zoom rocker right there. And that is great because you're gonna be able to control a lot of the lenses that Sony has with electronic zooming. Now, the other thing that is very apparent in this camera is that we're gonna have a lot of customization in this camera, something that we usually don't have in the A6000 line and the Sony A7C. So we can see, buttons at the front of the camera, we can see buttons at the top of the grip, we can see buttons behind the grip. And remember what I mentioned before, that it is at the front of the grip seems to be like a shutter release. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it is clear that at the top of the camera we have a movie record button. So I don't know if that button is there just for ergonomics, and us as a user, we'll be able to kind of like configure that button. Maybe that is just a button that you can configure for whatever you want. Or this may be a cinema camera first with some still capabilities, which, could actually be really cool. Now, let's actually continue, because if you look at the top of the camera, we have something that we don't have in any of the A6000, bodies or the Sony A7C. And it is what it seems to be like a joystick. So this would be the first time that Sony puts in this type of bodies a joystick. Now, this is gonna be something really wonderful if Sony can actually, roll this out into the other bodies, maybe Sony A7C2 and A6700, if that camera ever comes to life. Now, the next thing that we're gonna talk about is the hot shoe mount, because as you can see, this one has connectivity. I can see the pins right there clearly. And one of the things that you're gonna notice is that this camera doesn't have an EVF of any sort. So I'm assuming that through this hot shoe mount, you're gonna be able to connect all the microphones that Sony sells and even lavaliers that you can install there without plugging any wire, which is really handy, and I actually use. But also we may have an EVF that it may connect in the hot shoe mount, and I think if that's the case, that's actually gonna be great, rather than giving you like a tiny EVF, giving you the option to buy something a little bit bigger that you can rely on. Now, the next thing that we can see is that, like I mentioned before, you have the button 2 and 3 at the top. So there's gonna be a fair amount of customization here, but the next thing that I wanna talk about are the quarter threads that you can actually see all around the body. So at the top, we have 3, then it looks like we have 1 on the side right next to the Alpha logo. Most likely there are gonna be like 3 at the bottom as well. And this gives me a hint that potentially Sony is going to also, launch this camera with a couple of accessories. And I'm saying this because it would actually make sense for Sony to launch the camera with an EVF, like I mentioned before, that you can mount in the hot shoe mount. And probably they're gonna have some sort of fixturings or, accessories to mount other things. Maybe Sony is gonna make their own handle or something like that. Kind of like Red, the new Komodo has that nice handle with a remote trigger. So this could actually lead to something like that, which is actually gonna be incredible. Now, the next thing that we're gonna see if we look at the back of the camera is that we also have kind of like newer buttons, from this type of bodies. The first thing is that we no longer have the on-off button around the shutter release because, like I mentioned before, right now we have a zooming rocker there. So we have this on-off button, on the left of the camera, if you're looking at the camera from behind. Then where the menu button would be, actually there is a mode button. So that's actually great. Now, the menu button has been displaced to the right. And we also have something that we don't have in the A6000, line, which is the other, back dial, something that you do have in the Sony A7C. You also have a button there, the number 5, which seems to be configured from default as a focus magnification button. That's great. You have the function button, and the dial on the back of the camera looks, very similar to the one on the A6600 or the Sony A7C. So that is great news. Now, the next thing that I'm seeing is that you see that little slot right there in between the mode and menu. It looks to me that that may be a microphone. Maybe I'm wrong, but it looks kind of like a little slit with a grid, and could be a microphone there. That could actually be good if the microphone is any good, being able to capture good audio with an onboard microphone. And we also have 2 holes at the top, which I'm assuming are going to be the front microphones. Probably this one is going to be a camera that it's going to have built-in microphones that are going to be usable, because most of the microphones that we have right now in cameras such as the Sony A7C or A6600 are microphones that can be used for scratch audio only. You're never going to get like good quality out of those microphones. So this could be the first time that Sony tries something different, and I actually wish for that. Now, let's talk about what is really obvious by looking at this camera from the back, and that is going to be the screen. Now, it looks like this camera is going to have a flip-out screen, and most likely we are going to have the brand new menus and touchscreen capabilities. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because we have some information that this camera is going to be 37.95 euros. Now, that's going to be a lot of money. And this morning when I saw the body of the camera, I thought this camera needs to be priced between the Sony A7S3 and between the Sony A1. Now, in dollars, we're talking about $3,800 or $3,500 and $6,500 for the A1. So 37.95 euros, I'm gonna list the price right here, but in my prediction was that this camera was gonna be $4,500, and let's see what that converts when I actually sit down and do the conversion euros to dollars. Now, the other thing that we're learning is that this camera is going to have CF Express Type A, and most likely that is what this camera is gonna have, because the Sony A7S3 does have this the CF Express Type A, cross-compatible with the SD UHS-2, and also the Sony A1. So most likely that's what it's going to be. Now, the other thing that is being confirmed right now, or at least, in this last rumor, is that the camera is not gonna do 8K video capabilities, recording like it was actually said this morning earlier on. And I was a little bit concerned because I'm like, if this camera is gonna do 8K video, chances are that we're gonna pay an arm and a leg again like the Sony A1. And, right now this other rumor is talking about the camera being 4K up to 120 frames per second. Chances are that this is gonna be 10-bit 422. And I'm actually really happy about that, because it is going to, allow the price to be a little bit lower. Like I mentioned before, probably between the Sony A7S3 and the Sony A1. Now, what is crazy is that we also have pre-ordering dates right here. And we just heard about the Sony A1, which is a camera that is not even shipping yet. And this one, it says that pre-order are gonna start February 23. And that is what? Today's the 11th. That is about a couple of, maybe 2 weeks from now, a couple of days from now. That is crazy. So that means that we're gonna have another Sony announcement, very soon, maybe next week, or maybe, I don't know, maybe tomorrow. So that is actually really good, guys. Now let's continue looking at this images. Now, when it comes to the form factor, you know, I read in some of the websites and rumors, people are calling this camera very reminiscent of the Sigma FP. But if you're familiar with the Sigma FP, the camera is actually tiny, tiny, tiny. And this one, you know, seems to have some usability and some ergonomic that can actually make it a really, really great camera. Now, the other thing that I'm assuming is that this camera is also going to be full frame. Now, I've been reading, you know, all the websites, and no one talks about the sensor resolution, but what we can see right here is that we have a full frame 24mm f1.4, which hints me that probably Sony is going to be using the same sensor as the Sony A7S3. Now, if that's the case, you know, and calling this camera a dedicated compact cinema camera, I can see this camera being a very, very popular camera and probably my next cinema camera, because if you guys know, I did not get the Sony FX6. I actually got the C70. And I'm glad I got that camera, but you know, one of the disappointments about the Canon C70 is the autofocusing performance. And from someone like myself, you know, that was my very first cinema camera that is used to, you know, a lot of the mirrorless for video. It's kind of like a feature that I need for kind of like 50% of my work. Now, this camera most likely is going to have all the latest and greatest from Sony, you know, the latest autofocus, eye autofocus, most likely animal autofocus, and all the bells and whistles. So today I wanted to share these images with you guys. I'm actually really excited about this camera. I don't think I've been excited about a camera like this one, like I was for the Sony A7S3, and this one most likely is going to be a camera that I'm gonna try to acquire because look at that. It's actually a beautiful camera, guys. So guys, this is gonna wrap it up. Let me know what you think about this little bad boy right here, the Sony FX3. Pretty crazy, very compact, most likely it's not going to break the bank like the Sony A1. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and subscribe to this channel because I'll be reporting about this camera as more information becomes available. And until then, see you on the next one.